Hello, I'm Jeff Haller. I'm one of the founders of Feldenkrais First, and with me today is Christine Kendall, who has already engaged in a series of experiments. And we don't call them exercises, but we do call them experiments, in which she had a chance to discover some elements of the way that she experiences breathing as a way of supporting breath for her life experience. And so what we were really experimenting with was not the exercising so much of her musculature, but we were experimenting with, so to speak, her brain muscle. And Christine, how was it for you to experiment with and play with your brain muscle yesterday?
It was really fun. I found it especially fascinating how physically different I felt when I stood up, given that I was just laying on the ground breathing. The actual physical exertion was very small, but I felt like I had just woken up from a lovely hour-long yoga class where I'd stretched everything and I felt lighter and bigger. So the idea that was my brain exercising is pretty interesting. I'm curious.
So, and you were talking about just being in a yoga class. One of the things that in general in a yoga class is you have a teacher in front of you who gives you instruction and they model the behavior. They model the asana or the pose. And yesterday there was no one here to model anything for you. The only thing that was modeled was a series of questions. And even though I gave you some directions, I gave you the direction, for example, of as you inhale, lift your floating ribs. But it was followed with the question of, as you lift your floating ribs, what do you notice? What's the relationship you experience between your floating ribs and your sternum? So it's directing your attention into finer and finer details. And it's that discrimination of details that really offers you the opportunity to change what you do. Because you can't change unless you notice a difference, unless there's a contrasting experience. So how was it for you to have to find for yourself the answer? Our culture, we always want to get it right. We've been conditioned and trained from early on in order to gain the approval of our parents and to do well in school. We have to get it right. We have to produce something that will give us the kind of attention that we seek. And yet, that's not a part of this picture.
Yeah, it was really interesting not having validation that I was doing the exercise correctly. And all I really had, my eyes were closed. I just hear Jeff's voice and I'm just kind of following how things felt. And that's a really lovely experience because as soon as I was able to kind of let go of, even if I'm doing it wrong, he's going to tell me, I guess. It was my assumption, or he'll give me a cue that will correct me. And so I really just kind of let myself kind of be my own validation in a way, like just feeling it. If it felt good, keep doing that. It was very relaxing, very allowed you to kind of get in tune with yourself. And that felt really nice.
The art of the Feldenkrais method is the art of asking questions. It's not necessarily to create a teaching environment. It's to create an environment where you become your own autodidact. You learn how to listen to yourself, ask your own questions, and with that, continue to refine your function. It's the art of, in a sense, learning how to learn. But you don't need to learn how to learn because you already know how to learn. It's just that you have to exercise that muscle.
Cool. That's fascinating.
That is fascinating. So perhaps yesterday, remember, we started standing. And I asked you some questions as to whether or not you had a sense of being pulled down to the ground or whether you had a sense of, I asked you the question, for what reason do you have a skeleton?
Yeah.
And the question had to do with the way that you lifted yourself away from the ground. And we did some experiments with that. Mm-hmm. So can you take a moment and stand again for a moment, just tune in to your sense of standing now. in the way that you take up space, in the way that you sense yourself in the space. For the moment, we just so slightly fold your knees and fold yourself as if to touch the ground, and stop where it is that you sense that you would need to do something to go further, where you might involve your will to go further. And so you give yourself again a reference of where is it that you move too easily. Yes? And then return to standing. And notice for yourself as you make that movement of going toward the ground, notice whether you are going toward the ground. Are you going down to the ground? Do you lower yourself to go down to the ground? And so at the point in time that you sense that if you were to go further, you would have to involve yourself with some additional effort, then stop well short of that. Okay. And then easily enough, that's easy, that's fine. Just step forward and bring your hands to the stool. And again, notice for yourself whether you lean to the stool in such a way as if to expect the stool to catch you. Yeah, so if you pay attention, there was a way in which you actually fell through space. And the funny thing about falling through space is that all of a sudden your hamstrings and the muscles in your back are engaged to keep you from falling further. It's immediate. It's within microseconds that any time that your system has to stabilize you to prevent you from falling, then you engage. And that engagement, in fact, in some way begins to interfere with your capacity to make the movements through your full range of motion. Now, as you're standing there, will you please notice which hand is supporting you more? If you were to lift one hand, which hand would it be? That's it. And you can find within yourself that there's a subtle difference in the way and what's available. Yes? That's immediate. The other one requires a subtle change within yourself. Can you sense that? Is it equal, your ability to lift both? You see, you're already calibrating your experience and you're making changes, but the changes that you're making are profound because it's not just with your hands. They're the way that you're experiencing the support from your feet. So you're making subtle changes. If you pay attention, you're moving one foot to the other, just slightly. There's always some form of support that's equal and opposite to where you're finding the support from. There's some balance and there's some counterbalance. Very nice. Now, if you were to pay attention to yourself, which foot would you lift more easily? Which foot is it that you move to immediately? And you see, as you start to come to the other foot, do you have the same experience of availability? How would you make it available? Now make it so that you lift one hand and one foot. And explore. Again, what's the diagonal that you choose? You can stand and take a break for a moment if you wish. And once again. Now, how would you lift yourself down to the stool? So instead of having the sense that you're going to fold down to the stool, how would you have the sense that somehow the stool comes up to you? Yes. Now you've taken advantage of another way of organizing your musculature, and they're actually significantly lighter in your contact with the stool. Thank you for attending and being here. Hope you enjoyed, and feel free to contact us or hit here to subscribe. All right. Take care. Thank you.